enemies.
You touch my son, I'll kill you.
I ain't finished, you don't wanna hear me say it.
Love the movie. It was so awesome. You both did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Awesome job. So my first question is for Jamie, just because the movie focuses on, like, you know, dirty cops. With so much controversy now with, you know, crooked cops, police brutality, even looking at, like, Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter. So, like, how important do you think it is for us to come up with a better process to screen people?
I'm gonna tell you what you have to do. Because that's a whole thing that I talk about and deal with all the time. Of course, you know, we've done a lot for Trayvon Martin's family and families like that. I was in a city, big city, I won't say where it was. I was with the mayor, and the mayor said, could you go talk to the police department? I said, let me see what the hood says first. I go talk to the hood, and there was this big thing, big tragic thing. This years ago. This is before what we're dealing with now, big thing. So I go back to the mayor, I said, you know what you need to do? You need to get a white cop that you may think might be a little not so genuinely nice to minorities, and have him go into the inner city and get a kid who's like 8, 10 years old. And that cop needs to sit down and have a picnic with those kids, because those kids need to see that police officer in a different light.
Absolutely.
Because what's happening is this, the perception of everything. When you have social media, if a cop is caught doing something terrible, which the act is horrible, but once it goes on to the social media, every cop is considered horrible. When the cop looks on his social media and sees that every black person hates him. So now you have two narratives going on, where the cop feels, if he's a good cop, he feels, I'm being tagged. If he's a black man, 18 to 21, which I know how hard it is being a black man growing up and being stopped by a cop, my heart still, you know, beats faster when I see a police officer, so I know what that is. But now, everything is ratcheted up. So by the time that cop sees that black male, and it could be something that's get off the street, but that black male sees that cop and it's different now. See, I'm 49. I was a benefactor of the civil rights movement. So we didn't have these certain things that was going on. These young kids that are being met by this are spirited. We don't have to take this. So by the time they reach each other, what happens? Things at night. So what we have to do is, we have to ask the police officer, those good police officers, to say one thing. It's 2 words, my bad. Any black person in our culture will tell you that when you say my bad, it's sort of like release. It could be anything. Yo, man, I did something wrong to you. Yo, my bad. We sort of, that word, those 2 words metaphorically means, if one cop could come forward and say, hey, we do have a little bit of a problem. We got a big problem. We're gonna get together and have a picnic so we can start talking, so we can start looking at each other differently. Because until that happens, these types of things are going to remain at the forefront. And what's sad is that the minute we say something, everybody chooses sides. I know police officers that are great. I know they know what the deal is. So all we're trying to do now is get them to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so once we're able to do that, now we're doing some things on our end on how to change it. Where there's a commercial where a police officer's on a FaceTime, and he's actually FaceTiming with a young black male across the street.
Wow.
And we see them eventually get to close to each other. People are watching like, what's going on? And they eventually share something, a funny video or whatever like that, just to show it in a different light. Because the narrative of what we're watching,
it's so divided.
We're so divided because you can't watch it without a pulse.
Yeah, true.
You know what I'm saying? You can't watch it without a pulse. So, you know, I know that's probably a longer answer than expected, but it's something that bothers me as a black man every single day. Like, how are we going to make that right? And it becomes political. Now it's political. If you're a Republican, we only take the sides of the cops. If we're a Democrat, we gotta get rid of all of that, because at the end of the day, it's too much. And
it's
neighborhoods. It's too much. And at the same time, we do realize that those police officers are all going into the belly of the beast a lot of times to protect us. So we're not saying to those police officers that you're bad. We're saying that if the LA Rams are playing football and the free safety has a interference penalty, they don't just penalize the free safety, they penalize the team. So if someone on your team keeps getting infractions, you have to go to him and say, hey man, you're hurting our good work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You're hurting the good cop.
Absolutely.
And so all those great cops that I know that talk to me and say, hey, we know how to handle those situations. I know a cop who's white, who's worked Rampart Division for 40 years. He said, Fox, I never pulled my gun. Worked in the toughest area, but it's my vibrato. It's how I bonded with those people. I made them understand that it's a teaching moment, like in Ferguson. When Ferguson happened, he said, Fox, you know what I would have done? I would have pulled that kid over, and I would have called other cops, and we took him to the station and called his parents and said, hey, listen, he was talking kind of crazy, whatever like that. We wanted y'all to come here because I don't want to see him 5 years or whatever like in prison. That's a teaching moment. So when he goes off and talks and speaks my name to the community, he said, no, man, that dude right there looked out for me. So those types of stories and those types of things have to be seen immediately so we can get beyond what everything social media is prompting us to feel and to do.